Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sean Christensen. I'm the dude in the middle. I'm a technical product manager with System Center team in Redmond, joined by Jason Buffington, technical product manager, and Adam Hall, technical product manager. We spend a lot of our time talking about System Center and how our solutions support organizations monitoring and managing their IT departments. And today is SIM 3362. Focusing on monitoring IT as a service with Microsoft System Center. So a couple objectives we want to share with you that we hope you walk away with. One is that you have and understand the capabilities around monitoring and managing IT as a service. That you hopefully hear us explain how System Center helps you achieve that. And hopefully at the same time, we have a little fun with this. Now, because we're at the end of Tech Ed, and this isn't the last session, we're going to spend the first part of this time really talking through a number of different things. And we have just about every demo available to us in the System Center suite. Fair statement? Yep. Yeah. Well, so we're going to we can walk through some stuff, but we'd also love you to throw up, hey, can you tell me more about the Service Catalog and Service Manager, or how it integrates to Orchestrator, or something related to DPM and backing stuff up, if that's important at all. Darn, I didn't get a rise out of them. What?
You guys are big too, huh?
From a key takeaway standpoint, we want you to walk away knowing specifically about Operations Manager being the solution to help monitor your whole IT infrastructure. Service Manager being all about standardization, self-service, and compliance. And Orchestrator really driving integration, orchestration, and automation. You've heard us talk about, and you've heard bantered around private cloud, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service. All of this combining bubbles up into this concept of IT being delivered as a service to the business, and how we strike a balance between the requirements of the service provider, the service consumer, and the demands that places and the ability to deliver those services from the service provider, be that the application owners, the business users, and the data center admins, the IT professionals that are putting within the same organization. One wants to, did that just skip too far ahead? One is focused on maintaining levels of service, building your fabric within your infrastructure, delegating and control out, and also maintaining control themselves to ensure consistency. Providing that flexibility and elasticity of your infrastructure so you can respond to demands placed upon IT, and doing this in a manner that is cost efficient. From a service consumer standpoint, they want value. We need to deliver that value as IT professionals. They want to be empowered and have some agility in what they can do and what they can administer themselves. They want a self-service experience. Go get what I need and consume it when I want. They want visibility and control of their own applications that they're delivering as part of their business operations, and simplicity. They don't want to have to talk about updating and coding in XML files or anything related to database SQL queries. They want to be able to administer their applications, monitor their services, and have the automation in place to make their jobs simple. Now, we look at System Center and the vision around System Center is really to drive the delivery of IT as a service from within System Center. And if we think about the application owner, they have their business requirements, we have our IT processes, our IT tools, and our IT infrastructure. And when the System Center Service Manager, to help drive this, we think about the new self-service portal capabilities and the Service Catalog coming with Service Manager 2012. For those of you who were in the session that I did just prior to this, we showcased some of that, and I can show you a little bit more here today. That self-service capabilities is driven from a service model that is combined with process automation and process management capabilities between Service Manager and System Center Orchestrator to help take that service model and drive its deployment and delivery through an organization and capturing and managing all the bits and pieces that go into it. I'll go ahead and build all this out. From that process standpoint, we move into the necessary tools in the System Center stack to deploy, to configure, to migrate your infrastructure, be it physical, be it virtual, delivering as infrastructure as a service, delivering as platform as a service, and then to report back and provide information on what do we have, what's my inventory, how is it performing, the monitoring aspects of it, and even down to the audit. Do I have in my environment what I think I have on paper? And is it performing correctly and to my customers' expectations? That being sitting very much on the data center administrator side. That right-hand side of the screen, that's where we live. So that's a short introduction. I'm going to hand off to each one of my colleagues here. Jason, I think you're first.
Probably.
Yep. And to talk about the different key aspects from Operations Manager to Service Manager and Opalis/Orchestrator. And then, yes, plenty of time for demos.
Plenty of time for demos.
Jason, over to you.
All right, thanks. So hi, my name is Jason Buffington. As mentioned earlier, my primary area of focus today is Operations Manager. My side hobbies are AviCode, DPM, and System Center Essentials. So what I want to do to kind of start off the conversation is just kind of get you up to speed. Who in here actually already had a chance to see one of the Operations Manager overview sessions for Ops 12 this week? Okay, good. So and then we can just kind of fly through this. Really what I want to make sure that everyone kind of leaves with is the idea that over the last several years, System Center has really been evolving around this concept of what does managing the fabric mean. Sean gave us the examples earlier, looking at it from the two personas. What I want to do is kind of look at that single pane of glass and how that single pane of glass has actually evolved over the last while. You know, if you look at the beginning of that curve, and that's actually not even the beginning is more like in 2000 with MOM. But in MOM 2005, it was really around what is the server? How is the server working? We took a year or two off and we came back with Operations Manager 2007, and we came back with 2007, it was really more around how is the app? How is the service? In 2007 SP1, we started adding things like interoperability with other enterprise management systems. So now that we can give you one pane of glass, but for monitoring your infrastructure, if you were using other panes of glass for other parts of your infrastructure, we wanted to make sure that we connected and communicated with those. In 2007 R2, we added Crossbot, again, trying to broaden your visibility. In 2010, we added AviCode through acquisition to give you some visibility into .NET monitoring, so your distributed applications. And then, of course, here we are in 2011 talking about Operations Manager 2012. And the idea is that as we've gone through this journey, it's always been around, one of the key North Stars has been around raising your visibility as an IT pro. Over time, it started out with just basic health models. Then we started adding other kinds of platforms. And then, of course, this week we've been talking a lot around adding things like the network infrastructure, distributed applications running on both .NET as well as Java. And if we go back to kind of the big idea for this session, we're talking about monitoring IT as a service, around monitoring the fabric. Well, from Operations Manager's point of view, up until now, we really couldn't have said we were monitoring the fabric. We were monitoring all the servers and the services that were in the fabric, but that's not quite the same as monitoring the fabric as a whole. So in Operations Manager 2007, we now take all those servers that were autonomous objects and the applications that were sitting on top of those, but now what we're going to do instead is we're now going to look at the network that's underneath them that actually joins them together, so we can really see more what the fabric looks like. And then, of course, when you're talking about IT as a service and you're standing up applications, particularly distributed applications that are going to run on top of that fabric, we want to also give you that, the rest of the view. The view is how those distributed applications are running across multiple points or multiple servers within your infrastructure. And so one of the goals with Operations Manager 2012 is around really trying to give you that 360-degree view so that you really can appreciate IT as a service as a complete package. And so since many of you have actually already been to an ops session, I just kind of want to go through these a little bit. Yes, we've improved our synthetic transaction experience for how end users and monitoring that keyboard to server experience. But more importantly, what we're really focusing on this release is around the infrastructure as well as the application monitoring that you see in the two yellow boxes on that right-hand side. That kind of gives you a view for, yeah, it's hopefully most of these folks have already seen Operations Manager's piece, but that's where our goal is. Our goal is to give you that 360-degree view. And the goal of this session is now to kind of talk more about if you have that pane of glass, and you have the pane of glass that says, okay, I know how all the pieces are doing in my environment from a reactive point of view. Now what I need to do is when something happens in that environment, I start seeing some events and some performance metrics, how am I going to actually automate and measure and track everything else going on within the infrastructure? And so for that, we're going to need to leverage the other parts of System Center. Namely, we're going to first talk about Service Manager, and then we'll talk about Opalis Orchestrator to talk about how we can leverage those events and actually get the rest of the solution done. Is that fair?
That's fair.
All right.
So back to me again. So talking about, wrong key. So you've heard me talk about the complexities of IT as a service. We know IT is really complex, but from an end user standpoint, they don't care. Probably goes without saying. They just want the service that they want. They want to request it however they wish and expect the IT organization to be able to turn around and deliver back to them the necessary, the request that they put in place. Simply by, can I fill out a simple form? Can I pass that off? And can I get what I asked for and not have to worry about how it's actually done? In doing that, though, it's the keys are how you keep those costs down, how you keep your service levels up, and how do you make sure everyone stays informed. You do this through consistent delivery of those services. And by automating, as we'll let Adam get to, as much as we can. Yes, there's a lemur in there.
There is a lemur. It's one of the job roles. Go ahead.
Yep. So when we think about achieving those IT as a service objectives, we think about reducing costs, increasing service levels, driving faster time to delivery, providing more data, providing greater transparency and greater capabilities around compliance. We think of the necessary frameworks that exist in the environment. And this is what I've spent a lot of my time over the past number of years doing with customers is how do we apply best practices guidance from a design standpoint and implement it in a way that drives greater automation, greater standardization, greater self-service, and compliance to whatever your organization needs to adhere to as part of either industry regulations or your own corporate policies. Service Manager brings to the table that IT process management capability to deliver IT as a service in an effective way that ensures consistent delivery to standard service levels, that ensures you can drive consistent delivery against a process to help reduce cost and respond quicker. So we do that in enabling automation and integrating to other tool sets within the System Center suite to drive that standardization. So we do this through things like .NET and PowerShell into the configuration management database and our IT data warehouse inside the reporting data warehouse, and integration to the other System Center products through our connector framework, to Operations Manager, to Configuration Manager, and to Virtual Machine Manager. And when we think about add into this reporting against our environment, this Service Manager 2012 introduces a new data warehouse for custom reporting using OLAP cubes and essentially Power Pivot capabilities so that you can drag and drop and create your own reports. We enable standardization by providing the ability to define your business processes within templates within Service Manager. And when we get through our talk track, we'll show you what these look like. We provide that through standardization across our CMDB, or our configuration management database, providing a common model and providing a reconciliation of your data from different repositories. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a single repository in your organization where you can see what the attributes are of a computer or a server without having to go anywhere else? 1, 2 out of about 80 people. I congratulate you. That's fantastic. A couple other people in the back were like, don't have that. Within Service Manager, we introduced that through the connector framework, where I can take data from Operations Manager, from Configuration Manager, from Active Directory, and with 2012 from Orchestrator and VMM. I can synchronize that into my CMDB and present a single view of what a server looks like, reconciled from each of the different data sources. And then lastly, having that knowledge and that information together, we can present those standardized offerings to our end users that we're monitoring with Operations Manager, that we're automating with Orchestrator. We can present those offerings to our end users through a service catalog so that they can go and request what they want whenever they want. But we're doing it in a consistent manner, in a standardized manner. We're giving them the ability to have choice and flexibility of choice, but maintaining the control that we need to ensure that we have. Lastly, we enable the compliance. By compliance, the compliance is embedded as part of the processes, the standards, the self-service, and the automation inside a Service Manager. Microsoft also produces something called the IT Governance Risk and Compliance Solution Accelerator, which maps about 475 different authority documents from governance or agencies around the world, including the 2 that exist for Georgia on their own, and normalize all of the IT objectives and requirements that are required across all of those, and then translates that into actual settings that must be checked for on a server, whether that's Windows 7, Windows Server 2008, 2008 R2, and a few others. The benefit there is that compliance is maintained and evaluated proactively, not reactively, and aligned to your services and aligned to making it easier for you to report back to your compliance teams, here's how we are performing. Oh, wrong. Right. There we go. Talked about that. Oop. Sorry, the buttons.
The R and the F are backwards.
The R and the F are backwards, are they? Now I just realized that. Talked about that. Talked about, no. Now I'm going forward. Sorry, gang. The last session, the buttons were different.
He's confused by 2 buttons on the same clicker, so.
Australian.
Oh, don't start that. The Australian and the New Zealander. It's
I'll
not.
stand out
Yeah,
the way.
why don't you just stand out of the way right now?
I'm
So
good.
when we come back to Service Manager and IT as a service, in enabling automation, standardization, self-service, and compliance, from an automation standpoint, it is about response and remediation in line with your critical business services. Standardization is about having a consistent view of those services in your infrastructure, but also having a consistent delivery of the services that you want to offer to your organization. Self-service, I like this concept of choice and control with flexibility. The flexibility of IT to define, here's what we're going to give to people, and rapidly responding to that, but then giving that the choice of what you want to select to the end user and let them choose. But you know that they're going to choose within a certain range. And then compliance, embedding that compliance and making it part of your everyday activities so that hopefully you don't add to your workload when the compliance guys come knocking. So with that, I'll save the demos and hand it over to Adam.
Which is the forward one?
Never mind.
So, thinking about what Jason and Sean have just been going through, when we think about...
Lift it up a little bit.
Better?
Yeah.
Hey, there you go. Sorry. When we think about automation and integration, Opalis, as it is today in market, and System Center Orchestrator, which will be the new name moving forward in about 3 weeks' time, brings all that together and allows you to do not only automation, but also integration across the whole data center, the whole private cloud, no matter what you've got there. So what we have, before we bought Opalis, we had 5 very powerful capabilities that pretty much were insular. We could do service management, provisioning, configuration, monitoring, backup, restore. We had these unique capabilities, unique but insular capabilities is what I meant to say. But we had no real easy way of bringing it all together, and we didn't have a great integration story to everything else that was in the data center that didn't start with the word Microsoft. And so if we think about all these different vendors that are in a data center, and they will continue to be on a data center, we need a way to be able to reference a data center and a private cloud as a single entity, regardless of what's inside it. And so we can put the System Center products around the outside as they are in their 2007, 2008, and 2010 iterations. When we bring Opalis into that mix, we get the glue that brings it all together, regardless of whether it's System Center, regardless of whether it's other products that are in play as well. And so there's 3 words that we use when that all comes together. The first word being integration, being able to reference all of the technology in your environment, no matter who it's from, what version it is, and what you need to do with it. The second thing we talk about is orchestration, which means once you can reference that as a single entity, you can then pick out the bits that you need to do, put them in all the right orders, and achieve the outcome you're looking for. And then the last thing we talk about is automation. And this is usually where my conversation with customers start, but it's usually where it ends as well. And automation is really the last thing that you do on this particular list. You will get some benefit out of automating a non-integrated, non-orchestrated environment, but it will be a lot lower, and it would typically just be taking a bad process and making it run really fast. It's not a good process, it's not an optimized process, it's still a bad process, it's just running faster than it did before and with less human interaction. So we have inside Opalis, and the data bus exists inside Orchestrator as well, the ability to get all of those different components, all of those different technologies, and create a runbook and do integration and orchestration across all of those things to deliver an outcome. So an example that we have here is we are going to clone some virtual machines. Sounds simple enough. But what happens is as you create, or rather as you execute an activity to deliver something, you end up with all this information that you need to continue on. And so what happens within Opalis is when you run something, it executes and it puts a piece of information onto the data bus and it passes it along to the next activity. That activity can consume some of that information, add some more onto the bus, and we get an accumulation of information all the way through the execution. By the time you get to the end, you've got a lot of information on the bus and you can interact with it in many different ways. Whether you add it together, whether you split it out, whether you take a portion of it, whether you ignore it completely, it means that it's on the bus and you can reference it and use it. So in an example using both of these guys' technologies, if we were to do this, we would log a ticket into Service Manager to say, or we get a request into Service Manager to say we want to do this. We'd pick that up, we'd create a ticket, we'd update it, we'd do all the move, we'd do all the deployment, updating that ticket all the way through, then we'd deploy the DPM agent to it, make sure that it's backed up, and then we'd put the Ops Manager agent on it and make sure that it's monitored. Lots of different information, lots of different systems, lots of different people that would typically do those jobs. You link it all together and it brings it together as a cohesive unit. And so if we look at the VM lifecycle, and this is really talking about all the different technology groups that exist inside your environment today, all the way from the guys who look after the physical network down the bottom to the guys that are in event management and service desk at the top. When you want to do something, you're going to get a user request coming in. They're going to want something. You want to capture that request. You want to start delivering it. You need to configure it, drop into the virtual world, deploy out a virtual machine, maybe add some disk to it, join it to the domain, give it an IP address, go back up, associate some applications or services with that, close out the ticket, and then give the user access to what they asked for. Cuts across probably 5 or 6 different teams in most companies, which is where a lot of the cost is the handoff between the different teams and the handoff between the technologies. I get asked a lot of questions about, well, where do I start? You can do this thing, and I install Opalis, and I've got this nice blank piece of paper. It's kind of like Visio. You install Visio, and you want to draw a diagram, and people sort of say, well, how do I draw a diagram? Well, what diagram do you want to draw? What is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the outcome you're looking for? And so there's a list of examples up there. They are just examples. This is not a comprehensive everything you can do list. It's examples to get you thinking about what you can do. And the story that we tell here that has a couple of outcomes that are really important is those standard tasks that an organization have that are done all the time. You want them repeatable, you want them to be resilient, and you want them to adhere to your compliance requirements. So you want to make sure that when you do something, you do it the same way every time. You want them resilient. If something goes wrong, you want to be notified that something went wrong. You want it to be self-healing if at all possible. And then from a compliancy aspect, making sure you're capturing who asked for something, who gave it to them, who approved it, who's going to give it to them, how did it get there, and is it okay? And it's all of those things coming together that allows us to do what Opalis and Orchestrator can across all of these different technology sets. So if we look ahead to the future just a little bit, and System Center Orchestrator is the new name for Opalis. Opalis 6.3 is the last in-market product for Opalis. System Center Orchestrator will be version 7, and we're going to bring 3 new things. The IT Pro experience between Opalis and Orchestrator is remarkably the same. The way you create a runbook, the way you edit a runbook, the way you link things together, subscribe to the data, link all those activities together, the integration packs, everything is basically the same. It looks the same, it behaves the same. Pretty much all that you will see if you've used Opalis today is you'll see a new name at the top and a few new icons down the right-hand side in terms of colors. The rest of it's exactly the same. Where we're building is in the operational, developer, and business unit IT manager scenarios. So for the operator, we have a new Silverlight console that allows you to start, stop, monitor, and troubleshoot runbooks and automations that you've built out. So you can go to it, you can see a list of the runbooks that you were allowed to run, you can start them, you can see where they're at. If they don't work, you can drill in and find out why it failed and all those kind of things that you expect in a monitoring tool for runbooks. From a developer aspect, we have a new web service. It is OData, RESTful. You can connect to it. There's a new PowerShell provider that sits on top of it. So if you want to integrate into System Center and into Orchestrator, that's your entry point. And then from an IT business unit manager point of view, this is all the reporting and analysis. That same data feed that you can execute against also gives you all the statistical information about what's going on. When did something start? When did it stop? Who asked for it? What did it interact with? How long did it take? What did it actually do? All that information is available through that web service. And so I think that's kind of all the talking that we intended to actually do in terms of a delivery. We can do all sorts of demo, as Sean opened up with. We've got just about all of the System Center demos that have been done this week available to us. We can do on-the-fly stuff. And really, have you got any questions? Is there anything you want to know? You got any particular scenarios you want to talk through? This is the last session of the day. You'll get to go home, and we're standing between you guys and the party. So really, it's a case of how can we help you? What do you not know? What have we not told you? What doesn't make sense?
What would you like to see again?
Yeah, what do you want to see again? I mean, it's 4:56, so we've got 45 minutes left. That is yours. We're up here on stage, so please, let's be useful to you in the last hour. There's a couple down there.
There's a couple of microphones if you actually
Can you jump? Yeah, this is a really echoey room, so it's a bit hard to hear.
Could you show us some reports from Service Manager? I don't know if you have any videos on that. Particularly, you were mentioning the question earlier. Can you pull up information on a computer and that kind of things? Could you show us how you'd be able to get that information?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, is that like y'all?
You almost sounded.
see, hi.
That'll work.
Okay. Spanish and Japanese at the same time? Okay.
If you say it backwards, it's high C.
Ooh, don't go there. Wrong. What am I on? I'm on C. Is that me? Nope. Is this one me?
That's me.
That's you? That's
me.
Jason.
That's the main one. You must be the one right at the end.
4.
Well, the one that said C is, there we go. Sorry. It says E up here and it says C on my cable. You tell me. No more buttons for me. So, a quick one, in terms of reporting, what we have right here is an example of a report that comes out of Service Manager 2012 now in terms of the data warehouse that we can publish into SharePoint and make available for customers or users to access. Now let me go ahead and just size down my screen here a little bit.
It's better to myself.
Yeah. There we go. Keep changes. Close that. Just I have to save myself from scrolling all over the place. So a couple of sample reports that are coming with Service Manager 2012. This is an example of a software update report that we can create using a combination of Configuration Manager and Service Manager data. Which I think there's two parts to the question I think I'm going to answer. One is, what does the report look like that I can publish? And then what does it look like inside a Service Manager when I've got that consolidated view? So I'm getting to both. And then this is very easily viewable inside of SharePoint or inside as either a report that you want to look at or as part of our dashboard that I was looking at earlier, which can present either give me a chance to either embed an existing spreadsheet inside of my web page or actually have information showing related to my overall performance of my IT infrastructure. Here you've got an example of alert to incident trends and matrices. So we're combining data from Service Manager and Operations Manager at the same time. So that's one aspect of it. The other one is the consolidated view of, I'm showing the portal, what a computer looks like once it's come in. So here's inside a Service Manager. This is the CMDB, where we have a series of connectors that have pulled information from our different data sources. Just to go over to my connectors library, you can see I have an Active Directory connector, an Operations Manager CI connector, and then my orchestrator and my VMM connector. I haven't installed the Configuration Manager one just for this one because it's not in my immediate environment. But what we see is an overall view of my data that has come into Service Manager from each of these different, from each of these different data sources. And I have information about the hardware. Now with Configuration Manager, I would pull all the hardware data in here, all my software information, and then any work items and incidents that are related to this. Now this is a pre-build for Service Manager 2012. While these guys go, I'll pull up another version that has some more completed information to give you that greater picture. But what we pull together is everything and allow you to represent it in a single place inside the CMDB. This can then be pulled into service requests, incidents, problems, and changes that we create and referenceable inside of our actual tickets. So if I pull up a specific one, I would have a screen down here showing me what's my effective item. In this case, it's my Operations Manager CI. I can pull up that detail and see what it looks like. You see hardware information, physical drives. Here's my logical drives related to that. If I want to, I can open up that further detail and see, okay, tell me more about that particular logical disk. What's wrong with it? Is it compressed? Nope. Okay, maybe we can get some more space out of that. It's a larger size. All of this out of the box. We've had customers who have had other solutions by other providers that claim to have a CMDB or say they do have one, and they were able to implement ours within about a day, let it run, and get the data, get that whole set of data.
Is there any customizable fields that you can put in, particularly application owners and things like that, or
yes.
into this database? Where is that done?
So you use what's called the Service Manager authoring tool. Okay. It is simple as a drag and drop onto the particular form. There's a session that I did yesterday afternoon where we modeled the most critical of business processes, the coffee pot. That is, I will tell you because you can go get the recording. SIM 337. Oh, sorry, nope, wrong one. Sorry, forgive me. 340. Thank you, SIM 340. Thanks, Chris. If you grab that recording of SIM 340, we actually walk through a specific example of how to extend a form and how to build workflow on top of that. And yes, we were modeling the management of the level of coffee in a coffee pot with Ops Manager alerts. It was kind of fun. We did, but then we created incidents from it and actually routed those to a service desk so they could respond to them.
Question over there.
Question over there, sir.
Yeah, so if we think about the theme that we've heard this week of, we have to be IT service providers and the private cloud, right? I would love to see if you could say, take the tool sets you've talked about and say, okay, what would it be like for me to have a service manager page that allowed my dev team to request a virtual machine? What do I need to do to get that, to then tell VMM to go provision it and make sure that it shows up in SCOM? You know, sort of that end-to-end scenario that we keep hearing about that we are going to have to provide, that I get asked for every week, right? And today we have a lot of people doing a lot of manual clicking all over the place, and it depends which tech you get as to how successful the VM is for the developer.
Okay. Let me show you that first piece of it. And that is starting with the service catalog inside of Service Manager 2012. This is Silverlight web parts hosted in SharePoint that allows you to provide request offerings to an end user that they can select. So I'm going to go, in this case, I have a cloud services service offering, and I've created 3 requests. Give people the ability to request a new VM with SQL, request change in capacity of an existing VM, or report a virtual machine related issue. Let me go ahead and request a new VM with SQL. While that is coming up, the scenario you asked for, right here, we can get probably 80% of the way there. Dropping an Ops Manager alert onto it, well, Jason would need to know about the machine that I'm about to create, so that might be a little bit tricky. But what I'm going to show you is where takes us just about to that point that you're asking for. So we have my particular request here. I can provide them help-related articles, related service offerings. I'm just going to go to the request. Now, when I talked earlier about flexibility and control, here's the control piece and the flexibility piece. Here are the questions that we want to ask an end user because they want a new VM. Okay, first off, what cloud do you want to put it in? I'm going to say the Marketing Cloud. What VM template do you want to use? Now, we can tailor these based on your user role that you log into the service catalog with. In this case, I feel I'm important. I want to get the gold template. Guys, no comments.
My head.
And I want SQL Server 2008 R2 Data Center. And I want to give it a name. SIM, what's our session number again? I'll just say 399 Tech Ed. And I'll say next. Review my entries. Go ahead and hit submit. So as an end user, that's my experience. Log in, see the request, I want that, fill out my form, hit submit. Now, what does that translate into? We go into Service Manager. We have our open service requests that have been created here. So we see that Al has created a new service request to create a new VM. And if I look at my extensions tab here, I see he wants a gold VM with SQL Server 2008 R2 Data Center for his Marketing Cloud, and it's called SIM 399 TechEd. All right? Now, this maps into a series of service offerings and request offerings inside a Service Manager, inside of our service catalog. Now, if I look at that specific request offering called Request VM with SQL, I'll go ahead and bring that up. And what I have in here are the questions for that request that I'm defining. What are the questions you want to ask your end user to say, okay, we're going to make this offering available to you, but we need you to tell us some information. And we're going to present these questions to you so that you will answer them. And we can determine whether we want these to be required, optional, or maybe just display some information to you. And based on that, we're going to select a specific service request template that maps the information we capture directly into the fields of my service request template, so I know what to go grab. So in this case, I had my VM template, cloud, SQL version, and VM name fields that I showed you I had mapped those particular values into. And using those values, I can then go and invoke an orchestrator runbook that sort of looks like, where is it? Oh, it's right in front of us. Sort of looks like that. In this case, that takes 4 inputs: template, SQL name, cloud name, and VM name. So what I have done here from a service standpoint is I am starting with the request to that end user, taking the information from them, mapping it to my service request, and then passing that off to Orchestrator to actually go and run that runbook to provision my virtual machine. And then once that's provisioned, provisioning can incorporate dropping an ops manager agent onto it, configuration manager agent onto it, such that it then shows back up in the CMDB automatically.
So that was Service Manager 2012 talking to Orchestrator 2012 in terms of automatically running that runbook. I'll show you what another part to that can look like. Once again, so this is a runbook that actually does an automated protection into a DPM recovery group. So if we deploy out a new server, we push down the Ops Manager agent and connect it up to Operations Manager, and then this runbook adds a newly deployed server into the backup rotation effectively in DPM. And it once again takes those same inputs, goes and looks up the DPM server, puts it into the right protection group, and then triggers the first backup. Okay, so that's kind of the kinds of things that you start doing is everything from someone wanting something and filling out a nice Silverlight form into Service Manager, captures all of it, triggers the right runbooks, and then there's a series of runbooks that do all the different things that you need to do in order to achieve that. So that's kind of a good example of everything end to end. Christian?
Yeah, it's a little off topic, but I kind of have an op-ed question for you, if you will, in terms of, when I started my IT career 15 years ago, IT was considered a cost center, and that perception was hard to break. I mean, I kind of see the convergence of these technologies being more of something that's enabling business to actually do business. What's your opinions there? What's Microsoft's direction? Obviously, with the private cloud, that's it's in our face daily now, and the things that we can do become really powerful. How do we leverage that to our benefit?
I'll give you my opinion. I mean, some of the tenets of the private cloud are about delegating out to self-service users, or giving users self-service, so requesting something, hiding that complexity, not only in terms of what the technology bits are that come together, but also the process that gets behind it. And so all they see is, I've got something, I want something, and I just want it delivered to me. And so what we're trying to do is to move to a model where that's actually easy to do. And that means abstracting away from some of the nuts and bolts at the bottom, compute resource, network storage, and so forth, with VMM saying, you know what, let's just call that a fabric and manage the fabric and hide the complexity from IT as to what all those nuts and bolts are. And then lifting up and having composed applications that are created in a different way, so you've got built-in resiliency, and you can run it on-premise, you can run it in Azure, you can run it in the cloud, you can leverage all those economics. I think that the path that we're on is, I think IT is going to be, parts of IT are always going to be considered a cost because they are a sunk cost that needs to be there, but the value they deliver when it's no longer taking a week to do something and there's no longer outages because things go down and things like that, we're moving IT to a much more mature space, which means the perceived value and the real value is a lot higher. And I think that we're on the right path to do that. And particularly in our world, the System Center 2012 suite is what provides the foundation to build all of that out on. And it's a big shift from where we are in the current in-market products. Different names, different terms, and a very different way of doing it. It's going to take a while to get there. It's not like you're going to go out and we're sort of looking at the migration plans for all the different components, and you're not just going to go upgrade to 2012 in a weekend. It's going to take a while to get there. But getting to the private cloud and going on that journey, and as Sean says, private cloud is a journey, not a destination. And so it's a matter of how far you want to adopt it. But I think we're on the right path, but it's going to take a bit of time for people to understand what's possible and then to get there.
I want to latch on to the cost center part of that conversation. I don't think of IT as a cost center. It's an enabler.
I don't either. It keeps me employed.
No, so here's the thing. So obviously IT is not free. Right, it does cost, but I don't think of it as a cost center. I think of it as an enabler. I think of it as an accelerator to business, and sometimes I worry about businesses that only look at it as a cost center, as a tax. It's not a tax. It is actually what will accelerate the rest of your business. If there's one thing that we've learned, especially in the States in the last couple of years with the economy as it is, do more with less has never been more true. than what people are doing in IT for today. So I worry when folks look at it as, oh, I have to put more money into IT. It's not the right thing. IT is an investment, and the more that you can put into that, not only in the technology assets, but certainly into the people as well, that's what enables and accelerates the rest of the business. So it's an investment model for acceleration. It's not a cost center. My opinion.
I know. Yeah.
You're going to get 3 different opinions.
You're going to get 3 different within Microsoft. Many of you might have heard of us occasionally talking about something called Core I/O. And within Core I/O, Core I/O stands for Core Infrastructure Optimization. It's about how organizations are actually managing their IT infrastructure. Inside Core I/O, you have different levels of capability, basic all the way up to dynamic. Now, the intention with that is that we see organizations as being on a journey to a level of optimization with their IT infrastructure. Are you basic? Do you have a basic understanding of what you have and what you're delivering? All the way up to, are you a business enabler in that you have the ability you are delivering private clouds, you have the ability to, on demand, provision environments, provision applications, manage your fabric, have resiliency built into that hardware and infrastructure. That's from a technological level. There's also the personal level that IT pros that Microsoft by and large works with. You are on a journey yourself of understanding that it is no longer about boxes and administering physical servers. It is about understanding a business requirement and satisfying that requirement with the resources that you have combined together and can use to respond to that business need quickly and easily without having to think, okay, they want a new line of business application, I need to go buy all these boxes, provision all the, no. That's not the game anymore. The game is about having those resources available so that you can sit down with the business and say, what do you need? All right, hang on a second. There you go. Or I'm going to make this stuff available to you. You can grab it whenever you want. That is a very different conversation. And from some people that I've talked with, that's a very scary conversation for an IT pro, especially ones when you've been around for a long period of time. We kind of get locked into no, I want to be able to do this. We can't do that anymore. We ourselves need to become as agile as the infrastructure that Adam, Jason, and I are standing up here talking to you about. If we're not, we're going to get left behind. So hopefully that helps answer your question.
You certainly got our thoughts on it anyway.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Anyone want to see something? You all good? You just zonked after 4 or 5 days of solid tickhead? Just want to go to the aquarium?
Probably demo
Question?
Hi. I'd like to take it one more step before your demo about creating machines.
Yep.
I think I could take it one more step back, saying the developers that we deal with, I'm a server guy, that, they don't care where their servers are, where their apps are, but they're coming to me with a web tier, an app tier, and they say, I need it somewhere. And, as a server guy dealing with patches, I don't really want to give them another server just for their little app. Sometimes you do, but is there a way, and these guys, let's say they're working in Team Foundation Server, Visual Studio, to bring that in without me having to rekey stuff into creating new distributed apps in Operations Manager, setting up, which websites to look for once it's running, what services to monitor specifically, all that kind of stuff?
So when I was talking about composed applications earlier, that's one of the new models of applications that comes with Virtual Machine Manager. There's a feature going to be called Server App V, Server Application Virtualization, and that abstracts, as we talk about extracting the compute resource up into a fabric, that abstracts the application away from the operating system. And basically you bubble your applications into virtual packages just like AppV on a desktop. The difference is with Server App V is that you compose your application, you write your application to work that way, you can spread the tiers, and as you deploy it, you can inject in things like the SQL DAC configuration and the web tier and that kind of thing. yes, it is a completely different way of building an application. Some applications today will work that way, others will kind of be virtualized but not abstracted. When you look at that as a mechanism, go down the path a year or two, once we've dropped out and we move that way, then you'll have an application where you don't need to know where it runs. It will scale out, it will scale in, you can have that elasticity there, and you don't need to know which SQL Server you're connected to because there's a configuration file that when you drop the app down, it injects it in and it just works. That's the model that we're moving to over time. Anything you want to add? Did I do it right?
No, the only thing I would add is certainly for those applications that are .NET based, the whole model of how you define that within Operations Manager becomes radically different. If you had a chance to see it in the AbiCode sessions or the overview session for Ops 12, one of the things we talked about is last year we purchased AbiCode, which does .NET monitoring, and the way that it gives it to us is you don't have to go in and actually author your own views as far as how you monitor that app. Instead, all you'll do is by having an AbiCode agent on the production servers that host those distributed applications, because they're running .NET, we're just going to pick them up. Our discovery engine from that will already model out how that multi-tier app looks. We'll already plug into the .NET framework and have instrumentation for it. One of the big things we often hear in this kind of scenario is you're a developer who doesn't really talk to the server guys that much, you just want someplace to stand up. Historically, they tend not to also add all the instrumentation necessary for you to ensure a quality of service. So when something goes wrong, everybody's pointing fingers at each other. Low man on the pole kind of tends to catch it, right? So the idea is that with AbiCode, a lot of those hooks for that instrumentation is actually already part of the .NET framework. So by using the AbiCode pieces on top of that, now you have that instrumentation. You have the hooks to actually see how that app is going. So we discover the app, we'll monitor it from there without you having to do customization. It's literally like, well, actually, this one I can actually show you. If you could flip me over, not literally, but that'd be fun later. All right. Okay, so here we are. So, so I'm in Operations Manager, and this is actually Operations Manager 2007 R2, so this is shipping today. The AbiCode technology is also available to all SMSC and SMSD customers today. It'll actually be rolled into Operations Manager 12 by the time the product ships, but here we are. And so this is the authoring experience. So I'm in the authoring tab of Ops. Now you can see I've done several demos this week, so I'm running out of apps to monitor. But if I want to go in and actually I want to monitor a new app that I'm just standing up, courtesy of one of your developers is standing in, so I can go ahead and say, okay, I want to grab a .NET-based application. I'm going to find all the apps. Let's grab one I haven't grabbed before. I don't think I've grabbed that one yet. Now notice here, I'm not picking servers. I'm not picking where it stands up. What I'm picking up is, this is a list of all of the .NET-based applications that's already been discovered by Operations Manager across my infrastructure. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this one and say next. I can pick what I want to call it. Thursday app. I can configure some basic parameters around it. How often do I want it? How sensitive am I to the application itself? I've got some performance counters I can track for history purposes, so I can actually do some trending from what my SLAs are going to be. And then I can actually key in specific events. So down here, my average request time exceeds 10,000 milliseconds. Basically what that means is if that web page or that website takes more than 10 seconds to come up, that is slow. By my standard, I want to be notified of it. In addition to that, I might say, there's certain pages like the logon page or authentication page or the search page, I also need to be have a higher grade of service on. From here, I can go ahead and say browse, say OK. Now it's going to list all the web pages that make up that given app. I can go ahead and pick a particular one, like how about knowledge login? That's a pretty common one. So now I can say, okay, my threshold settings for login are specific to, and I can go ahead and tune this down. And literally 2 more OKs, and I've defined monitoring of that app. Now, this app would take me a few seconds to actually fully discover. So let me show you one that's already been done. I'm going to go over to the monitoring view, and I'll go to my Dinner Now-based application. And let's look at the diagram of that so you can actually see how that actually modeled out. So now what it's going to do is discover all instances of that app across my entire infrastructure, and I can actually find out what's healthy and what's not. Turns out in this case I do have some unhealthy components. If I go into my state-based view of this particular app, now I can actually start to see some trending. Here are those metrics that I just set up. There's that 10-second rule, or 10,000 millisecond rule. This is what it's tracking on in real time. How many monitored requests am I getting? I can go into my alerts. And this is where it starts to get interesting, this really is, if you want to talk about monitoring your fabric, if you want to talk about monitoring an app for the sake of health across your infrastructure, this is where it starts to become real. Because now what I can do is I can go ahead and open this up. I've got my embedded knowledge that tells me what kind of things are going on inside of Ops. And if I go over to the context of that particular error, I get the stack. I get really what was happening inside of that app. And this is a conversation now, I'm an IT pro, so this is all I know about, okay? The developer on the team, he gets a different view. He gets a view that looks like this. And then what happens is when he opens up his view, he can actually see a lot more information. He can find out other events similar to this that have happened in that app, so he can find out, hey, this is not a one-time deal. This is happening a lot. This app is being impacted. I can find related events that are correlated back to this. I can find out the flow of data if there's multiple servers that are involved in that particular transaction. Those all come through here. And I can find out performance counters for how is that app actually doing. I can find out things like from server to eyeball is taking too long. And it turns out because some of the JPEGs are too big. So this is really how, once you've stood up an app, you can really start monitoring its service. My favorite part of this, though, is since most of us in here are IT pros, one of the things that we often hear is the IT pro says, hey, according to operations manager, this stuff is slow. So when you go to the dev guy says, not my problem, right? So then you go back and you argue about it a little bit. And basically what this allows you to do is instead of going to your dev guy and saying, your stuff is broken, now you can go to your dev guy and say, your stuff is broken and I can prove it. Right? But this is really how you then have that conversation where you're saying, okay, let's work together. I can pull up some different areas where I could show you where the application was failing because of a SQL call. All right, let's go get the DBA involved. Sean stood up a couple SQL servers a little while ago. Turns out maybe the problem is that the application is making a SQL query that the database doesn't have rights for. All right, now you can actually put them all three at the same table and we can work it out together without the finger pointing. So yes, absolutely, part of this whole experience of when you're standing up these new applications, does it get better? For .NET, it gets loads better. And that's native to Operations Manager 12. But you can start using it today with Advocate.
All right, thank you. And I agree with you, Sean. The customer, all they want to know is my app is up. And then we've got to put all those pieces together and to show them, yeah, it was or wasn't. They don't care if it's network or disk or whatever. They just want to make sure it's up. Thanks.
Yep.
No
Thank
problem.
you. Before we lose any more people, we should probably go ahead and let them know what a set looks like.
Do you want to just put me up? So just so everybody's aware, for all of the System Center 2012 releases, we're going to have an evaluation program. What this gives you is a guided tour of the new products. Each of us will be running it for our product sets, and there will be ready-made guides, there will be tours of the features, calls with the product group that basically in a beta you would typically not get, and ready-made guides and that kind of thing. So if you go to msft.it/CEP, there's all the sign-up forms there. If you go and sign up now, you'll get an email the minute the betas are available, and then we'll be kicking off the calls and taking you through that. And it's designed to build a community of all the other people that are doing the same thing as you. We've run a couple of these before. I ran an Opalis one last year that we had about 300 customers on, and that created a community of like-minded people that are trying to do the same things. And the forums, you started to see people answering other customers' questions and things like that. So if you're interested in taking the 2012 suite for a spin, go sign up. We'll let you know when it's up and running. Christian, sorry.
Sure. So going a little bit off of Jason's last statement and the little demo he showed there. So quick question number one is, in order to do what you just showed, do I just need to add Avocode to SCOM, or do I have to add that separate server and get all that set up for Avocode?
So today, using the current Avocode 5.7 architecture, you do stand up a separate server. It uses a separate database in the back end. It uses a separate web page for the Intercept Studio. And there is actually a second behavior where you're going to put another agent on those particular application servers that are hosting those given apps, so we can actually have some better access to it. So that's Avocode as it is today. Our intent, now this is pre-beta, so put the big asterisk next to it as, details subject to change. But our intent is really to collapse as much of that infrastructure as possible so that by the time Operations Manager 12 runs, we're hopefully using the same database, the same data warehouse, the same agent payload going out to those boxes. So there's a couple steps you have to do in the short term. We had 3 great sessions on AviCode this week. There's actually also a hands-on lab as well for how to set up a config of Avi. But for right now, it's a separate add-on set of installs for that that will line up for 12.
Okay, and then looking forward, what are the most important things that we should be doing now, right? Given that these products won't be coming out for a little while, but they're going to come out as a tsunami, right? It's beyond a wave because there's going to be all these products coming at us. Microsoft's going to do a bunch of marketing, right? So my IT services director is going to say, that sounded really cool. Can you get that for me tomorrow, right? So what are the things we should be doing now so that we're ready when these things hit or when they get into the right phase for us to be starting to work with them so that we can take advantage of them as quickly as possible?
So,
You go first.
we'll all have a thought on this.
We'll
So,
have, yeah,
Jason, go first.
Number one would actually be the SEP program that Adam just mentioned. I mean, the whole idea of those SEP programs is they kick off right around beta time. And for many of them, they will actually carry right up until around the RTM or at least through the RC. So if you really want to be ready, the way to be ready is to be an active participant of that SEP program. You will, we get a little feedback from you, you get a whole lot of knowledge and a bunch of new friends from us. Yep. So that's rule number one, to be ready. From a product specific perspective, I can speak to my products. In the case of Operations Manager, the path to Operations Manager 12 starts with Operations Manager 07 R2. So if you have any Ops 07, presumably with Service Pack 1, you're going to want to go ahead now and move from 07 SP1 up through R2, because then from there we can start doing some things which make it a lot more seamless. But take that first bullet now in order to get yourself to an R2 perspective. In the case of data, and by the way, once you're there, the very short version is that an Operations Manager agent in Operations Manager 12 is multi-homable. So you can take a production server or a machine like Adam's laptop. I can put an Operations Manager 12 agent on that laptop. It'll behave like an Ops 07 R2 agent and continue talking to your Ops 07 R2 management group. Oh, by the way, it'll also talk to a new Ops 12 management group as well, as you can start to phase those things over. The other thing, which was very, very, very important, and I don't have any slides in any of my other decks that say Microsoft promises, but we actually did make a promise this week, actually based off of what we promised at LMS, and that is that your existing management packs today will work as is with Operations Manager 12. We will not repeat what we did from MOM 05 to Ops 07, where everything had to be converted and uplifted, and by the way, it didn't work. We're not doing that. So every and it was a tough engineering call. There were some trade-offs that had to be made to make that happen. But your management packs and the investments you've made there will work already. But take the bullet and make sure that you're on R2 if you're not already. From a DPM perspective, DPM, obviously DPM 2010's only been out for a year. And so the kinds of things that we've been working, so most of the work that we did that was heavy uplifting for the agent and for the back-end engine, that was already done when we went from 07 to 10. So the engine actually doesn't change appreciably between 10 and 12. What does change is the experience, particularly the manageability of it. So with that in mind, the big news in DPM 2012 is around the centralized console actually being Operations Manager. Well, and as we demoed this week, the Operations Manager console that comes with DPM 2012 actually can manage both DPM 2012 and DPM 2010. So as soon as you drop your first DPM 2012 server in your environment, you now have a centralized console for your existing DPM 2010 farm. So it's a near negligible upgrade path from those two products.
In the automation integration world, so Opalis to Orchestrator is a big code-based shift, but under the hood, not a lot's changed, if that makes any sense. So as far as using the product, if you're using it today, it's the same tomorrow. There is an export-import functionality already built into Opalis, and that's the way to move things that you've already built. But I think the most important thing, because there's not a lot of people in the room who are probably using Opalis in production today, the most important thing is to start working out what it is you want to do with an integration and automation tool. And so what are the outcomes you want? What are the processes you've got? Mapping out the paper-based version of what do you do, who approves it, and so forth. And we've got some big estates within Microsoft that are adopting Opalis and Orchestrator today, Xbox Live, MSNBC, and our Intel MPSD, which is desktop management basically. It's about 300,000 desktops that are managed around the world. And they basically all come up with a very similar time frame, which is building a runbook takes about an hour. Assume a runbook takes an hour to build. You spend around about a month working out what that did. Okay, by the time you have all the meetings about what it is and get the process signed off and get the change request process sorted and all that kind of thing, there's a lot of work that goes into deciding what it is you're going to do and what all the rules are. Dragging and dropping and making the technology do what you want it to do is the easy bit. And so thinking about how do you want your environment to work, what are all the products we're going to have, what are all the orchestrations, the automations, the integrations and so forth that you're going to need to have in order to do self-service and delivery and elasticity and so forth. That piece of work is a lot of whiteboards, a lot of meetings, and a lot of spreadsheets and Word documents coming together to go, that's what we want. It's your specification, if you will. Install the product and link the things together, that's the easy, quick bit. Okay, so I would recommend today you've got effectively, what are we in May? You've got about 6.5 months to get ready for Orchestrator to drop and be available and do all of this stuff. Are you going to be ready to use it and take advantage of it? That's my personal view.
From a service manager standpoint, it goes without saying, community evaluation program when we release the beta, which is due out towards the end of Q3, so around the September timeframe. The upgrade from Service Manager 2010 to 2012 will be an in-place upgrade. So anything you do now will survive an upgrade into Service Manager 2012. So the benefit there is you can take advantage of what we have now, managing incidents, integrations to Operations Manager, Configuration Manager, centralizing and getting a standard view of your in your CMDB of all your infrastructure. You can do that now. You could actually download the evaluation this afternoon, go home tomorrow and stand it up in your environment, and potentially by the beginning of Monday, have a picture of your environment to look at and play with. That can be used to start managing your IT processes. And then when 2012 comes out and we introduce the greater integrations to Orchestrator and to Virtual Machine Manager, you can start taking advantage of those. And in terms of that, it's just setting up the connector from Service Manager to Orchestrator, and the information comes right in. And you can start calling those runbooks directly from within your service requests, from within your incidents and the like.
So conscious we've got about 5 minutes left and we've had a poor dude standing over here waiting to ask a question for a long time, so please, go.
I really like this integration and automation and all that. It's like giving the developers a handful of quarters and pointing them where the vending machine is.
That's a good way of putting it.
That will turn up in a future event.
We'll get your name afterwards so we give you credit, but I think we're going to steal that one.
It's great and all, but oftentimes I get a request from a developer or application owner saying, I need a machine with 24 cores, 256 gigs of RAM, and 500 gigabytes of storage or whatnot. I would have to create that manually because I wouldn't want to put a template like that on the site. So creating that manually, is this going to change how I do that or make it more difficult, make it easier? How would you handle that kind of situation?
Yeah, I need one of those too. Yeah. I'd like a couple of those actually.
Can it come in about this size?
No, small bookends. Look, first question I would ask is why? You know, I mean, in a lot of cases, most developers don't really have a concept of what do they really need from a proc and memory and footprint perspective.
I'd take it as an abstract question, though, in terms of, I think, I'd extract it around and say, you've got these one-off things that are a little unusual, and how would you cope with that? That particular example, you wouldn't need a separate template because you can inject in those parameters on the way through, so I don't think that's quite so scary. But I get your question around they want something and you've got to do something and you might only do it that way once. In a private cloud scenario, you wouldn't be doing that once. That's just a different way of delivering the same thing. It's still a machine on a piece of hardware or a virtual machine, and you just inject in those parameters on the way through. Now, as Sean had a gold, silver, bronze, that's clearly whatever's bigger than gold, platinum or something, you know. There's something pretty uber about that. But you still, it's the process of what you want to do is the same, but the parameters that you piped in were slightly different. So I think that you'd want to move to it's still a machine I need to deploy, it's just maybe a little different, and you can cope with difference. I would say something like the approval mechanism of that might be a bit different because of the cost associated. So automation doesn't mean that everything runs seamlessly without a person getting involved. You can run for a bit, wait for someone to say yes, and then pick it up and carry it on again. That's still automation because you've automated the process, not necessarily the system level stuff. I think if we look at things like ServeRack-V and so forth, the developer needs to move to a model where you don't need to know those parameters so much because they're saying, here's what I've got. You can scale in, scale out, scale up, depending on what you've got. Pay as you use it model. That's a slightly different scenario. Does that help?
I think that also when the service catalog that I was showing you shows the ability to present standard requests, as Adam said. You can also create a standardized offering called custom. And instead of presenting the user with, okay, which option do you want? Okay, if it's a custom offering, you need to tell me what you're asking for, and then you populate to them, hey, your request needs to be justified as to why you will not select a standardized offering, blah, blah, blah. It will go through however many levels of approvals. You could actually build that as a standard request offering that you publish. So people can say, hey, okay, you can select from whatever choice you want, as long as it's red, blue, or green, or gold, silver, or bronze, whatever you want. Or you can select the custom one, acknowledging that one, they might have to pay for it, and two, it's going to go through every approval under the sun if you choose to configure it that way. And they have to be ready to justify why they're not willing to pick a standardized offering. That is certainly something that, 2012, you'll be able to actually build that into the service catalog straight out of the box, and you can manage those types of requests and drive behavior of, hey, we have standard ones, you can have those right out of the box, we won't have any approvals, you get those. And you can configure that how you wish. And you can also configure a custom request form to select and collect the information that they want to give you, and then tell them at the same time in that request, you're going to have to tell me why and be willing to pay for so you can ask for the big, huge, I want a 16 or 24 gig laptop with 3 terabytes of disk space. Good luck finding a laptop like that, but you have to pay for it.
There's also common attributes of what you're delivering there, though. You're still delivering the same service, it's just got different parameters. To do an example, say they wanted an operating system that is not in your catalog. There's an item where maybe, you know what, you're going to build one of those servers and you're not going to do it again for a really long time. Yep, I would rat hole that one and say, you know what, we're not going to take the time to build that automation because we're really only going to do it once. And if you find yourself doing it on a regular basis, then maybe it's worth the investment. But it's hit the big buttons first. That's an edge case right out on the side.
Now the yellow button on the stage says we have about 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
So we're going to take our last question, and then Tech Ed will be over.
Done.
Well, there might be a few. He might have like a yes or no question. Sir, go ahead and ask your question.
No, even if he says yes or no, and that's actually great, but no, okay, anyway, go ahead.
Please.
It's a short one. It was a long time I played around with Ops Manager, but when it comes to the application owner and his view, I want to see how his complex application, different tiers and so on, how is the capacity, is it responsive, and how's the SLAs? What's available right now and in that area, especially in Operations Manager, because that's what we have today.
Got something to show?
Sorry?
Do you have something to show?
Yeah. The easiest way to do this for Ops actually is Ops 12. So in that experience, we have these new concepts called dashboards. And in fact, let's do this. So I'm going to show you the beginning of a dashboard, and then I'm going to show you some slides that specifically tell you how we handle that for folks like developers. So we're in the monitoring view, and the view hasn't really changed much.
The view hasn't changed at all just yet. There we go.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so now we're still in the monitoring view, and the view still hasn't changed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, a new dashboard. And the way you should think of a dashboard in 2012 is it's very much like it's a view with tasks and dynamic data folded together. Okay, So from here, what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and say I want to do a grid layout. So I'm going to actually build a new dashboard just for my developer. This is my developer dashboard. And then let's go ahead and put it in that client's okay. Let's see, so I'm going to do one big screen so they have something big to look at, some charts, and then from there I'll go ahead and draw some other stuff off to the side. So let's pick this one. Go over here and make it different. Say OK, say create. All right, so now what it's going to do is it's going to create this framework of a dashboard. And then what we're going to do is for each one of those panes that we had, that's P-A-N-E-S, not P-A-I-N-S. For each one of these panes that we have, we're going to go ahead and put a widget in it, because that's what you do. You put a widget in a pane. So this takes just a few seconds to do. So if I keep talking and actually not really saying anything, but without taking a breath, such that anyone else can actually notice that I'm not actually pausing for any length of time, I've actually bought myself enough time. Here we go, it's done. All right, so, so now I can actually wait for a second. There's my developer dashboard. And now I can go ahead and now on the side, see I've got these widget functions. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to add a widget. It brings me back in this wizard, but now I have other ones out here. Now, in this particular build, I only have one widget available, but I can go ahead and pick a widget over here and say next. I can start to drop that widget in. This is alerts from my app. And then from here, I can start to pick product groups. So let's say this is a SQL application. Takes a few seconds to think about what it's in there. And let's do this.
All right.
What you doing?
We're gonna.
All right.
So if I have a web server that's co-hosted with different applications and a SQL server that has a lot of databases, I can make a small selection just of the...
Exactly. So now what you've got dashboards that are specific to those kinds of owners. And here's the fun part. This dashboard that you're seeing here, all this is exactly what I had. There's one widget, a second widget, a third widget, and then one on the top. So you build the dashboard for what you want, and we have widgets for alerts, for performance widgets, you know, any kind of information that you want to be able to display as part of that dashboard experience, you're going to be able to put in through here. And then the fun part for your developer is that what you're seeing here is the Operations Manager view. Operations Manager 12, console, this is what you live in. This is probably not what you want your developer to live in. So everything that's in the dashboard that's available in, on the Ops console, you will also see, courtesy of Silverlight, as a web page. And you can actually give that developer his own URL straight to his own web page, and they can just live off the web page version. Similarly, when Sean mentioned earlier about different kinds of roles, we've got the application owner, he gets the web page. You're the IT pro, you get Operations Manager console. For that business owner, for that C-level exec, he can have the same dashboard experience or a different one, courtesy of a SharePoint page. We now have a SharePoint web part, and it actually has the same dashboard experience. So you can build these dashboards as they make sense for the different kinds of consumers, and then more importantly, they can consume this information in a way that makes sense for them.
And with that, we are 1:45 minutes over. Thank you, guys. If you have any more questions, we will be up here, and we're also going to the party tonight. So
come on up
and ask us more questions. Thank you very much, guys.
By the way, this is the last session. Don't forget.
You're done.
Woo! Thank you very much.